It's 5 degrees outside right now with a wind chill of about -9. I got my Winchester 87 out here. Going to take a little work on replacing this toe here that's been split off. I'm going to take the butt plate off, of course take the butt stock off. When I got the butt plate off, I'll probably do a little bit of blacksmithing on it. It's bent and kind of crusty. Not sure if that's a proper screw or not, but it doesn't really matter with this old good. Try to find a hole in it. No treasure though. What I'm going to try to do, I've done this many times before, I'm going to flatten this area off and find a donor piece of walnut and put on here. It won't look exactly right, it won't match, there's no way to really do that and make it completely invisible, but it'll make a functional repair on this. I'll try to figure out the grain pattern and split off a piece of donor material that will match in the way the grain is running. I might shorten this down just a little bit to get the butt plate to fit a little better. I'm going to do a lot of this off screen. Then I'll probably soak and clean up this wood a little bit. Okay, I'll flatten this area off. I might do a little checking. It looks like a little bit of a dip there. And I've taken just a little bit off the surface here so I can get a sharper edges on this butt plate. I did a little hammering on the butt plate, and may have to do a little bit more. I think I'm going to soak it in vinegar to see if I can get some of that crud out of the checkering and rust off from it. Next thing I'm going to do is try to find a piece of donor walnut that'll match this. Now that I've got this sanded, I can see that the grain goes like this. This piece has been quarter sawn, a classic way of making a buttstock. Well, I found a donor piece of walnut, and taking a look at the grain, you can see it here. Curvature of the grain in this piece matches pretty well the curvature of this. Now I have to work this down quite a bit, but that's where I'm starting with. It's got enough material here to finish out that piece there, if I do everything right. Okay, I've drilled some shallow holes in my piece here. Obviously I don't want to go all the way through. I hope I've not gone too deep. And I've cut pieces off this dowel rod and made holes much deeper into the pockets here. The next adventure will be mixing up some aquaglass, and I'll fill in these holes and then put the piece on here and clamp it. Okay, I've mixed up some aquaglass, and this is just barely stuck on there. I'm going to go back and clamp it now. I mixed in a little bit of sawdust in with it to hopefully the seam, if there is one visible, will be a little less visible. I put a lot of aquaglass down in these peg holes. Here's my clamp set up. Not very elegant. It's a little hard to get it perched on here in the right places to get it to clamp. Been on here, oh, maybe 15-20 hours. I can surely safely take the clamps off now. A little tape on here to protect the, keep from having to do too much cleanup. While I was letting the epoxy dry on the buttstock here. I cleaned up the butt plate a lot. I soaked it in vinegar and water brushed it, and re-soaked it and water brushed it. I started by rasping off the excess hangover here and refitting the butt plate onto it, and I'll probably leave the butt plate on it while I go ahead and contour this down through here. I used this cheese grater type rasp to knock down a good little bit of this. It's still proud about a 32nd or 16th of an inch. I dare not go too much further because it leaves too much texture. I'll probably follow up with the fine side of the rasp and then go to sandpaper. Okay, I've got this down to contour now with the fine side of the rasp. Looks like I've got a pretty good job here. I'll switch to sandpaper now and just finish it off. It's fairly smooth already. The old wood where I've had to blend it in here and got onto it is really soft. Well, I've got it rasped down and roughly sanded. It's contoured pretty good. The color match. This is old yellow wood here that's aged. Some of it will come out, I think, it'll blend in, but again, it's a functional repair instead of there's a little sliver out right here that I may as well fill. I don't know if I'll just clean it up and use acroglass with a little bit of tint in it, probably. Well, I finally got up above freezing, so I got an opportunity to strip the old finish off this buttstock. I just used paint thinner and then scrubbed it with steel wool, but I ended up with a finish that was about like a pigskin or something. I guess there's so much soft material on these stocks, so I did go ahead and use some 340 grit sandpaper in a block to knock some of that pigskin texture off of this. I wasn't going to do that, but I still left plenty of the old scars and patina. I think it's going to blend in really well. While I was at it, I also added a little splint up here and fitted it in with the action. And when I was doing that, I noticed that this has a hairline crack right through here and back in here. I think what I'll do is drill about a toothpick size hole down in here and then mix up some acroglass and take actually a toothpick and pump it down in there and press this back and forth until it does capillary action, sucks that acroglass down in there and repairs that crack. No use putting it on there at this point without fixing that. Okay, I've mixed up some acroglass. It's about the consistency of honey, warm honey. It probably would have been better to use something like super glue or some other thinner glue. It would have worked just fine for this, but acroglass I know always works. And I've drilled my toothpick size hole in here, and I made me a little walnut toothpick because I just happened to find a piece that was approximate right size, just thinned it down. So what I'm going to try to do is work some of this into that hole. It looks like it's pumping out right here now. There we go, got the right combination now. I don't know if you can see it, it's coming up through this crack. If we've got a cracked buttstock in the wrist like this, all the wood's there, a lot of times you can make a really strong repair. So sometimes it's busted up so bad I'll put in pins in drill holes and put in pins where it doesn't show. And I've recovered a dozen buttstocks like this and other repairs. I can see it's squishing out there and I know it's coming out here. So what I'm going to do is put a little more dab on it here and just shove this in here. I could break it off, but I think I'll just leave it like that until it sets up. When it gets to kind of a plastic stage, I'll take a craft knife or something and just cut off this stuff because it'll wind up being harder to block brick. I don't have a good rubber bands or a clamp to clamp this with, so I'm going to use a zip tie. If I have to, I'll run a wedge up underneath of it there. I think that'll work fine. Leave it set up. And like I say, I'll come back in about an hour and test this. Matter of fact, trick I use is just set something in that leftover Acuglass and I'll check it instead of checking that. And if it starts to get to the place where it's like plastic, then I can carve off the excess here and cut that off. Let's I'm going to turn it the right way here so you can see it's got to the stage where it's still kind of plastic, and I can take my knife here and cut off this excess. Once it hardens, it's really tough to file out. So if I get this overburden out of here, now it'll reduce my effort a little later. I use this little pointed file here to wedge under here to tighten this up a little bit more. Just break that off. I'll leave that to set up even harder before I pull off the clamp and tape and clean up the rest of it. Well, hopefully we can bring kind of some closure to this project. I've done a lot more than what I initially thought I was going to, but it shows 3 different kinds of repairs. I've got a little bit of run out here, which is fine. Usually I just scrape this a little bit. And we'll get it the right angle. If you can see, there's just a little dark line there where that Acuglass showed. If it had been a stock with polyurethane or something, I would have tried to be very careful and not remove any more polyurethane finish than I had to, and then come back and just touch up that area. Okay, it's a little tight on the tang going back into the channel, so I'm going to go over to the workbench and just take a file and clean this up just a little bit more. You can see where it's tight right in here, and I'll be back. I have the buttstock on it. It's a little shrink from age around here, and that's one reason why I didn't want to sand it down anymore. I'm going to take it back off, and we're going to do probably a little bit of true oil on here to see what it's going to kind of look like. Maybe do a little bit of buffing up at the end to brighten up this wood after I've been handling it. There we go. Now you can really see the difference in the color here. This darkened back up and this is staying a little rosier color, but after it's exposed to daylight for a year or two, it'll darken up. I put more work into this than I thought I was going to, and in retrospect I could have went down and visited my old buddy Brian making gun stocks in Warsaw, Missouri, and had him bring out a tub full of buttstocks, and I think they're about $90 for a utility grade one. Or I could have maybe, the amount of time I spent on this one, just made a new one. But it wouldn't have the character of this one. I'll probably let this set and dry for a day or so. Pretty low humidity in the house. I'll set it down by the stove, and then I'll give it another coat or two. I got my buttstock browned. Doesn't make much sense to take off all the rust and put rust back on it. And I'll probably work these screws over a little bit and improve them up some and glue them. Well, here's the payoff. About a week's duration, about 15 to 30 minutes a day tinkering with this. The crack here has been repaired. The little piece put back in here. Some of the scum taken off the old finish. The toe repair, it's a good hard wood here. It's matching reasonably well. You about have to point it out for most people to notice. Butt plate has been cleaned up and straightened and browned, and screws have been cleaned up a little bit and re-blued. Not the most beautiful, elegant thing in the world, but it matches the rest of the gun. I hope you enjoyed this long duration of